Stargate Voyager.
Well, I am really excited to have a researcher, explorer, filmmaker. I think of like 30 plus films, author of 10 plus books, I believe, the one and only L.A. Marzulli. L.A., thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
The honor's all mine, Derek. Thanks for having me here. And by the way, folks, it's 14 books, and number 14 comes out in October. I signed the first book deal in about 20 years, really, with a Christian company called Charisma, and I'm glad I did. It's a good deal. It's a win-win for both sides, for everyone. Not my first rodeo. This is number 14. It's called The Rungs of Disclosure, and it talks about the whole incremental climbing of this ladder up into full disclosure. And that'll be out in October. We're very excited about it. And, go to lamarzulli.com if you want updates on that.
14 books. That is incredible. Well, speaking of your books, way back when I really first started to go way down the rabbit hole regarding like our hidden history, I came across one of your books that really helped me connect a lot of the dots, and that was On the Trail of the Nephilim, which was really a part of a bigger series and now even film series. There it is right there, On the Trail of the Nephilim.
Big, thick book.
Yeah, big, thick book. I remember all the pictures and had a lot of your photographs from your travels. And basically it centered around, as it says in the title, the Nephilim. So I thought we would start out, for those who may be unfamiliar with the topic of the Nephilim, give us a quick overview of who the Nephilim are, where they come from.
Everything that we're about to talk about, whether it's ufology or the Nephilim or end times biblical prophecy or megalithic structures, everything, in my opinion, the gateway to understanding everything that's going on is the Genesis 3:15 narrative. And if we collectively don't understand the Genesis 3:15 narrative, then we are left kind of going like, I don't know what's going on here, which is why a lot of other researchers never come to an understanding that everything is connected. What happened in antiquity is being repeated in modernity. There's no doubt about it. A lot of what we see is being cooked up by the dragon. So the Genesis 3:15 narrative, and I got this from my elder brother, Gary Stearman. This is years ago at one of the Nephilim Mounds conferences in Ohio. And Gary got up and he said his topic was, it's all about the seed. Those of us knew Genesis 6, we understood that. But what had been kept from all of us there was the idea that the springboard in the Genesis 6, which talks about the Nephilim, is Genesis 3:15. So you've got Adam and Eve in the garden with the dragon, the serpent, Satan. They're all in the garden together, but the pre-incarnate Christ appears to them. That's the Lord walking with them in the cool of the evening. Adam and Eve are terrified, absolutely terrified, in my opinion. The text doesn't say that, but they're hiding. Why would they hide? They know they've done something, but they're not sure the grave implications of it. They're not sure just how damaged they really are, because they're completely damaged goods at this point. But the Lord knows that. And so he appears and he says, the dragon's over here, Adam and Eve are over here. And the pre-incarnate Christ says to the dragon, Satan, your seed, your offspring will be at war, at enmity, at war with the offspring of the woman, pointing to Eve. The one coming from the woman will crush your head, the dragon's head, Satan's head. You will bruise his heel. Derek, that's the entire biblical narrative. That's the entire history of our globe is centered around that one verse. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. If we don't come to a proper interpretation, exegesis of the Genesis 3:15 narrative, then we are left wondering about the rest of the Bible. So 3 chapters later in Genesis 6, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. Well, who are the sons of God? They certainly aren't human beings, although that is taught in the seminaries. Let me back up. We'll go down a rabbit hole here. Why is that taught in the seminaries? It's called the Sethite theory. So the sons of God become the godly line of Seth, and the women of Cain become the hoochie mamas, right? and they all get together and they create this Nephilim. No, 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 no. That's not what the text says. The sons of God, when translated, is always the B'nai Ha-Elohim, which always refers to the angelic host. End of story. My late mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, talks about this. Chuck Missler talked about it. Gary Stearman talks about it. G.H. Pember talks about it. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But the bottom line is this. If you were going to take and sabotage the one verse out of the Bible, which sets up the rest of the narrative, that's the verse you do. And guess what? Whoever, and I'm talking conspiracy here, whoever put that in motion in the seminaries throughout the United States, this is why pastors today in the pulpit have no idea about what's going on here or what's going on here. They have no idea because they've not been taught Genesis 3:15. They were taught the Sethite theory. So when they see something like this, then they're confused. They have no idea what we're looking at. No idea at all. Genesis 3:15 is the gateway to the biblical narrative. And what it states is the sons of God, i.e., the fallen angels, took wives and went into them. Why did they do this? Because they know someone is coming that's going to take the dragon's kingdom away. And they know if they can pollute the genome, corrupt the seed, that's Doug Hamp's book, Corrupting the Image, great book, by the way, bully for you, Doug. If they can corrupt the seed, corrupt the image, Messiah will never be born. Checkmate, it's over, I win. And if you want to keep a book away from the people, you keep the book of Enoch away. Even though Enoch's quoted in Jude, you go online and some of these expositors just go on and on why we shouldn't pay any attention to Enoch at all. If that's the book you want to keep away from the people, that's the book you want to keep away from the people because it tells you exactly what's going on. It mirrors the Genesis 6 verbiage exactly, except it says the angels. Instead of the Sethite theory, the sons of God, it just says the angels of heaven looked at the women that they were beautiful and took wives. It's plural. I wrote about this in my book, The Cosmic Chess Match, and also Countermove, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood. The Nephilim now are the progeny of fallen angels and human women, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. LA, what does this have to do with the end times? Everything. Go to Daniel 2:43. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men. There it is again, seed. What seed? Whose seed? It can't be men's seed mingling with the seed of men. So who's left? There's only one guy left, and it's the dragon and the dragon's host. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave. Jim Williamson taught me this. The word cleave is the same word we get back in the Genesis account for a man will leave his mother and father and cleave, marriage contract, to his wife. Why is it that the book of Jude quotes Enoch? And Jude just assumes, there's no footnote there. There's no, little go to the bottom. I'm quoting Enoch. Everybody read Enoch. Everybody knows exactly what he's talking about. The skeletons of the giants were openly on display in Jerusalem at the time of Josephus's writing, which means that Jesus saw them too. More than, to think that he wouldn't have seen them. And I even go a step further, and this is complete conjecture on my part. When Jesus leaves the temple and the apostles are there going, hey, tell us what will be the sign of the end, the sign of your coming. What's, the sign of the end of the age? And Jesus looks at them and says, well, it'll be like the days of Noah. Okay, but where does he say that? This is totally conjecture on my part. He's not in the temple. He's not in the outer court, certainly not in the inner court. He's outside. So where is he? If you were going to display the Nephilim giants in Jerusalem at the time of Josephus's writing, which is just, AD 70, right there, right? So if you were going to do that, where would you do it? You would do it when pilgrims came into the city on their way up to the Temple Mount somewhere. Now, it's conjecture, but why couldn't Jesus be at that location? And he goes, and he turns and points to the giant skeletons. It'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. So where are the giants, LA? Bop, 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 bop. The giants are here. We proved that in our Kandahar Giant film, which is on Watchers 10. We interviewed the shooter. It was at least 12 feet tall, possibly 14 feet tall. I've had other people come up and basically tell me that they were involved in it on some level. They basically reiterated the story and piled on the shooter's testimony. So we know that that's there. It'll be like the days of Noah, similar. So now we get into the whole breeding program of ufology, where women are taken and they are impregnated. So you don't believe me. You don't have to believe L.A. Marzulli. Just go to Bright Barrett on Fox News. He basically stated on the show that some women are taken aboard UFOs. They find themselves pregnant. That is number 4 in our 10-part UFO series on abductions. We interviewed 4 people who were taken. There's a physicality to it. Sperm is taken from the men, ova taken from the women. But if you don't know the Genesis 3:15, you don't understand that what's going on is the mixing of the seed. Except it's like the days of Noah, but there's no marriage contract here. They impregnate the women. In the 3rd month, they come back to extract the fetus, put it in an artificial womb. And we talked about this in our cattle mutilation film. And folks, you got to understand something. And I'm just going to lay it right down here. We've got about an hour. There are 30 films and 14 books. We have an hour. Seriously? You need to do your homework. And you know what? This isn't about, Elias just wants to make money selling his books. Well, yeah, of course I do. Or watching the DVDs. But you guys need to do your homework. You really do. There are 10 films on UFOs. There are books on the Nephilim. There are 8 films on the Trail with the Nephilim. There are 11 films in our Watchers series, 30 films. And you can go to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net, or lamarzulli.com. For $4.99, you can download a film and watch it. I can't do it any cheaper than that. And I'm not going to give it away for free. You guys need to do your homework because the work is there. The hundreds of hours and decades of research are there. And a workman is entitled to his wages. And my business partner and I, Gil Zimmerman, created 10 films on the UFO phenomena. Everything links together. Everything links together. And folks, we are in an unprecedented time in all of history where we are seeing things that I never thought we would see, but it's there. And what people need to understand is all this is penned, is written in the so-called biblical prophetic narrative. Now, some of you out there will scoff and go, oh, you're just stumping the Bible, blah, 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 blah. Have you ever read it? Have you ever sat down and tried to wade through that book? I've been studying it for 44 years, and I'm basically a neophyte. That's how I feel. Some parts I get, some parts I'm just in awe of. Other parts I'm still wading through and trying to figure out. But there is a thread of prophecy from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation, the first and last book. There's no other book like it. But you know what? You got to dig for that prophecy. It's there. I'll just give you one prophecy. Just one. It's from Amos 9, verse 14 and 15, written thousands of years ago. Think about this. Just think about it. Because what's going on in Israel and in the Middle East right now is, and this is why it all connects together. When you read Amos 9, verse 14 and 15, Amos is a prophet, lived a couple thousand years ago. This is an old, old prophecy. Think about that. And this prophecy states this with great specificity. Great specificity. There's no ambiguity here at all. We know exactly, a 4th grader can read that and go, yeah, okay, I get it. And it says this, I will gather the captives of my people, Israel. I will gather the captives of my people, Israel. They will rebuild, they will build and rebuild the waste cities and inhabit them. They will plant vineyards and drink the wine from them. They will plant gardens and eat the fruit from them. I will plant them in their land, and never again will they be pulled up out of it. Never again will they be pulled up out of the land I have given them, says the Lord your God. 1948, the captives were gathered back, right? The captives are gathered back. The waste cities are rebuilt. The vineyards are there. I've been to Israel. I've seen it with my own eyes. Gardens. They sell produce to much of Europe. They're one of the main exporters of produce throughout Europe. I mean, that in itself is incredible. And never again will they be plucked up out of it. So if Israel somehow is removed from the land, then we have to say that the God of the Bible doesn't know everything, is not all knowing. See what's at stake here? But guess what I'm doing? I'm going way out on a limb saying that that's never going to happen. Never again will they be plucked up out of it. So this is what's in the pages of that incredible book. It has this thread of prophecy, and I just gave you just one. There are many others, trust me, that when you get into it will blow your mind. Most of the churches never talk about it, so the people are ignorant. And then you've got a lot of the churches which are replacement theology, which they don't believe that the promises of Israel are valid today. Oh, yes, they are, more so than ever. But I digress. So the bottom line is the Genesis 3:15 narrative is the gateway to the rest of the Bible. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. So the flood happens, it wipes everybody out except for 8 people who are pure in all of our generations. In my opinion, and other researchers will disagree with this vehemently, they're entitled to their opinion, but I'm entitled to mine. Ham's wife does not carry the Nephilim gene on board. That to me says that, well, the God of the Bible is sort of a trickster and he's going to wipe everybody out, but the 8 people that go, I missed one. Sorry about that. No, I'm not buying that. It's a second incursion. For the life of me, I don't understand why it's so difficult for people to understand that when he comes back or when there's a counter move, how the Nephilim returned after the flood. See why, folks, you need to do your homework. There's another book. It's exactly all about this. We don't have time to get into it. I know I'm being kind of, glib here, and I get that, but I mean, the body of work, the corpus of work is just it's growing and it's not going away. We're working on other films. We have such a backlog of stuff; it's ridiculous. But the bottom line is, the entire world is destroyed except for 8 people. That's not a myth. We know it happened. We know the deluge happened. Absolutely. The Chumash Indians over here in the Santa Monica Mountains, where I am talking to you from, they have a flood legend. The Chinese have a flood legend. It's everywhere. And this is how why did God do this? All flesh. This is why the book of Enoch is so important. You do 2 things. You never tell people what Genesis 3:15 means, and you keep the book of Enoch away from the people. So everybody just remains ignorant. They have no idea what's really going on. And this has been perpetrated for the last 2,000 years, essentially.
Yeah. Wow. You you said a whole lot there in 10 minutes. If I could interject. So Genesis 6:4, you referenced it. Let me read it in its entirety. It says, there were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, those were the mighty men who are of old, men of renown, or giants. So so Genesis 6:4 mentions, and other scriptures like Numbers 13, right? They mention these giants. But then, like you said, the book of Enoch, which is this ancient book that the Bible mentions, um, really breaks that Genesis 6:4 narrative down in detail,
Correct.
talking about how these fallen angels came, where they came, Mount Hermon, how they bred with these women, and basically how they started the seed war that you're describing. Their progeny were these Nephilim hybrid giants, super size, super strength, super speed. And then you mentioned a non-biblical source, Josephus, right? One of the great historians of the first century.
Mhm.
I got one of his quotes right here, which this has always fascinated me because his books are full of these giant legends. He says there were till then left a race of giants who had bodies so large and countenances so entirely different from other men that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day. So, like you said, that's crazy that even in 100 AD or so, these things were still on display as these demigods, these basically these titans of old.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So we've got the Bible, we've got the Book of Enoch, we've got secular historians like Josephus talking about giants. Like you said, there's legends from every culture on earth talking about this golden age where the gods mingled with men. We've got all these newspaper accounts going back to the 1800s, right? Of
Correct.
giant skeletons being dug up. We've got the Paracas skulls that we're going to get into. We've got all this stuff going on. And I like how you brought it to, you believe, so according to the Bible, God wipes out this illegal creation, but it says they were on the earth in those days and afterward. So you believe, and you laid it out real clear, that they came the second time like they did the first time, right? So now let's talk about these Nephilim tribes. Tell us a little bit about that, and then how you believe they migrated across the globe to where they end up in Easter Island and they end up in Peru where we've been, and all this.
Yeah, this is there's a saying I came up with a couple of years back. There was a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. So, we can scratch the surface here because we have an hour, but that's why there's 8 films on the trail of the Nephilim, and more on the way. We have a backlog of places that we've been that we haven't even edited yet and shown people. So, it's shame on us for not getting things out, but we're human and there's only so many hours of the day. So the bottom line is this, that we know the seed war takes place. We know that Jesus is talking about the seed war way back in the Garden of Eden. We know that. It erupts several chapters later, Genesis 6, the flood, but then the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. So when Abraham is tapped out by the pre-incarnate Christ, he's over 90 years old at this point, and so is his wife, Sarah. Both of them are well past the age of having children. Nothing is working anymore. Let's just leave it at that. I think you know what I'm talking about. Nothing is working anymore, which is why Sarah laughs, because she knows this isn't going to happen. We're not going to have any children. Sorry. And they go down to Egypt, and all of a sudden Sarah winds up in Pharaoh's harem. Why does Pharaoh take a 90-year-old woman into his harem? Chuck Missler taught me this. She was more than likely, both of them were regenerated. The Lord turned the clock back. How can he do that? That's impossible. This is the Lord who created the universe, who spoke everything into existence. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was with God in the beginning. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So, we either believe that or we can believe the fallacy of Darwinism. That somehow over billions of years, magically, this very complex spiral of life just decided to go, I know, I'll create an eyeball. Wait a minute. I'm not even sure what an eyeball is. So get where I'm going with this? The complexity of the human body is just astounding. The complexity of the animal kingdom is astounding. The complexity of the oxyribonucleic double helix spiral of life, the DNA molecular structure is just mind-boggling. But it's there. Complex code. So the Lord appears to Abraham and says, out of you, all the nations of earth will be blessed. And then he says something, which again is overlooked, that you're going to go down to Egypt for 400 years. What? Until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness. Well, who are the Amorites? So when Moses leads the children of Israel, and have you ever wondered why the God of the Bible hardens Pharaoh's heart? You ever wonder why that happens? He does it so he can perform another miracle and show the children of Israel he's the real God. You can trust him. He's the real God. And that's why the plagues, because Pharaoh's, okay, let my people go. Nope, my heart's been hardened. I'm not letting you go. And finally, he lets the people go. And even then, this whole other thing happens when the Exodus, right? When they get up there, Numbers 13, we saw the sons of the Nephilim, the sons of Enoch, and we were like grasshoppers in their sight. Is that hyperbole? Of course not. It's exactly what we were like grasshoppers. The giants are there, and they begin to list the tribes. 40 years go by, that generation dies off. Why does God allow that? Because after everything he showed them, including the parting of the Red Sea, the feeding of everyone through the manna, crossing the Jordan, just everything that's there, they still don't get it. They still don't get it. And you know what, folks? For those of you who are out there, including myself and Derek, we have to pray that we get it, that we're not like that first generation that went up to the promised land and were afraid to go in. Exodus 14:14 basically states that, the Lord, I will fight for you. All you need to do is be still. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just remain silent. Just be still. The Lord will fight for you. Look to the Lord in his strength. Seek his face always. I mean, those are just some, I think it's First Chronicles 16:11. Those are scriptures that wash our minds with constantly because it's his fight. I am strong in the Lord and in his might, not my own. I am strong in him. The Lord will strengthen you, right? The Lord will strengthen you. The Lord is faithful. He will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. All those scriptures, it's the Lord who strengthens us. So the children of Israel get in there and are afraid to fight. So now Joshua and Caleb, Moses is gone. Joshua and Caleb get up there. Think about this, Derek. The 12 tribes of Israel are there. In one of those tribes is the seed that will eventually lead to the birth of the Messiah. I mean, you want to talk about cosmic stuff going on here. And then in the land of Canaan are the tribes of the Nephilim, the Anakim, the Zamzumim, the Emims, the Rephaim, the Nephilim. They're all there. The Horites, the Perizzites, they're all there in the promised land. What we see at this point is the two sides, the seed war in full-blown manifestation. It's not taught in the churches because no one knows about Genesis 3:15 and they don't teach it. So they don't understand the cosmic implications that are about to happen in the land of Canaan. They don't understand that it's a seed war, that the seed of the woman is laying in one of those 12 tribes, but no one knows which tribe yet. And out of one of those tribes, Messiah will come who will kill the dragon. Instead, you get the other side of the aisle, the Darwinists, with all due respect, like Richard Dawkins, who don't understand the biblical narrative and look at that as genocide. And I would agree. When I got there 44 years ago, I'm reading the Bible for the first time. I take the Bible, I'm almost ready to throw it against the wall. I can't reconcile this because no one taught me about the Nephilim. It would be another 10 years before I would finally get Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's book and read it in one sitting or maybe two, but just like, you got to be kidding me, because he explained about the Genesis 6 narrative.
And you're saying on this point being that when we read about God telling, Israel to wipe out the inhabitants of Canaan, that sounds like genocide, and it is genocide unless you realize, make that point even deeper, that these tribes of Canaan
they're hybrid entities. They're the mixing of the seed. They are soulless. They have no soul. This is why God didn't create these. This is a creation of the fallen angels, women of earth, creating a hybrid known as the Nephilim. They are in a fixed state, but they are soulless. They are absolutely soulless, in my opinion. It's not genocide. God is wiping out the evil deeds of the fallen angels, creating something that never was supposed to be here. This is why Genesis 3:15, the seed of the dragon, the offspring of the dragon, will be at war with the offspring of the woman. And right there, the conquest of Canaan, offspring, and they go at it. What's interesting is when they come in to the promised land, there's a little lead tablet that was found in the spoils from Joshua's altar. Joshua's altar sits on Mount Nebo, overlooking the gateway to the promised land. So the archaeologists went in there and did excavations. They took the dirt, the spoils, and moved them to another site. So someone got the brilliant idea, let's wet sift through this, see what we find. They find this little lead tablet. Through the use of microscopes and everything else and modern day technology, they're able to go in and it says this: cursed, 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 cursed of Yahweh. You will die cursed, 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 cursed. I was on a Zoom chat with the head archaeologists and other people, and I asked a question. I said, I do not believe for a minute this cursed tablet is towards the children of Israel because of its location on Mount Nebo, because it's near Ai and everything else, the gateway to the promised land. And that was buried on Joshua's altar for thousands of years. The altar was closed down. When the people went in, altar was closed down. That curse is for the inhabitants of the land, in my opinion. I realize I'm completely biased in this view. Also, cursed of Yahweh, it's the first time we see the name Yahweh in Proto-Canaanite being mentioned. It's the first time. There it is, it's written. And the head archaeologist said we all need to go back to kindergarten. This is like, it blows our mind. Because the head archaeologists don't believe in the Nephilim and don't understand it, they don't understand the significance, in my opinion, of what is there. And I agree, once again, I am completely biased. But that is not a curse against the people of Israel. It's not. Blessings and curses, I get that. They were there because of the law. I understand that. This, in my opinion, is a curse. Cursed, 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 cursed of Yahweh. You will die cursed, 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 cursed. This is to the Nephilim tribes that are in the land, because that is found on Joshua's altar, which is the gateway to the promised land. Now, again, that's my opinion, but it's based on lots and lots of research. Then we get the stele, and I was taught this by Mando Gonzalez, also Tim Alberino mentions it, but others. There's a stele, a rock inscription that was found on the north shores of Africa, and it basically said, "We are they who fled from the face of Joshua the robber, the son of Nun." What's that doing there? What do you mean fled from the face of Joshua the robber, the son of Nun? There was a diaspora of Nephilim tribes, because when Joshua and Caleb go into the promised land, look at Jericho, and then look at everything else after that. And it's totally genocide, unless these are Nephilim tribes. These are soulless entities who are in a fixed state. And then they go, we can watch them island hop all throughout the Mediterranean. I've been to many of those islands. I've photographed, I've interviewed people. We see their handiwork. They're there for a period of time, then they just disappear. They go all across the Mediterranean. They come into southern Spain. They go into Portugal. They go into Spain, into France, and finally over to the UK, into Ireland, and the island hop over there. Thor Heyerdahl proved this, and we show this clip in the very first Mysterious Mound Builders, that you can build a papyrus boat and sail from the Straits of Gibraltar without a compass, without a map, and the trade winds will blow you to the island of Barbados, the New World. How do we know this? Thor Heyerdahl proved it. He built a reed boat like they had in Egypt at the time and sailed from Gibraltar out into the Atlantic without a compass, just set sail. The trade winds blow you right to the New World. And when you go the other side, the trade winds will blow you into Paracas, which is where this guy comes from. These guys show up about 3,500 years ago. And we're the only Christian team for sure that's ever gone down and extracted DNA. And we had the DNA tester. We're still testing, by the way. We're desperately trying to get nuclear DNA. The orbits are 25 to 30% larger than normal. The pupillary distance is shorter, smaller than a normal human being, which means, according to the optometrist on our team, that they more than likely had night vision. The smoking gun in all of this, and this is the work of our anthropologist on our team, Rick Woodward, is this. This is the foramen magnum. I was recently accused by someone, and I won't mention their name, that I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, in our film, which is number 6, the DNA evidence, we sit down with medical doctors and surgeons and archaeologists, anthropologists, optometrists, multidiscipline team. All of them look at these skulls and say, this is something that's genetic. All of them say that. So, do I have a degree in anatomy? No, I don't. But I'm relying on the testimony from the people that we interviewed. I'm relying on their expertise. They are experts in anatomy. Once again, the orbits, 25 to 30% larger. There is no cranial suture that goes from here, which would divide the two parietal plates. It's not there. But the smoking gun by Rick Woodward, right here is the foramen magnum, right here. It should be here. It should be there in the center of the skull.
Which is where it is on our skulls, right?
Yeah, it's the center. That would balance it. That would balance the skull. See the way that would work? Whoop, let me be careful here. This is, let me grab it so you get a really good idea. It's here. It's all the way in the back. See that? It's all the way in the back. but it should be here. It should be in the center of the skull. You guys got that? Should be in the center of the skull, which would balance the skull, but it's not. The foramen magnum is all the way to the back. We've got medical doctors in the film, surgeons. I mean, this is real research. All of them come on the record and go, "This is genetic. It's not human, and you cannot manipulate and move the position of the foramen magnum, which should be there to the rear. You can't do that. The foramen magnum is formed in utero, while the entity it's in its mother's womb. This is a smoking gun. Plus, the DNA evidence, this is why our film is so critical, shows a Middle Eastern, Eastern European DNA haplogroup from the women, from the human side, human mother's side of the equation. I'm not making this stuff up, but it's overlooked in academia and the scientific community because it goes against the Darwinian paradigm. It goes against what the status quo is, what their particular what their paradigm, what they espouse in their paradigm day after day after day. It goes against that. So they'll label me a pseudo-archaeologist. Well, how is DNA testing pseudo-archaeology? How is getting a bunch of medical doctors, anthropologists, archaeologists, and other people looking at these skulls and saying that something is genetic? How is that? I mean, explain this to me. But that's how they fight. It's ad hominem attacks all day long. We don't know what we're talking about, and that's how the game is played. And they'll disparage us, they'll disparage our work. But no one to date that I'm aware of has gone down and tested the Paracas skulls. No one has given us an explanation of how the foramen magnum was moved. We were the first team ever to go down to Paracas, take the DNA. We were at the ICA museum, and we went into the museum proper, and we had them take the very elongated skull called the Chongo skull out of a display case. It's all on film. It's all on our film. No one's ever photographed that. We're the first. We're the first.
What year was that when you were first down there?
That was it's 2013. I was the first time down there. But
that's right when I was going down the rabbit hole and I came across your book and I was seeing these photos, and that Chongo skull, when you talk about the smoking gun, that is the smoking gun skull, isn't it? I mean, that thing is so massive.
They're all smoking guns. I mean, once you know what to look for, let me see if I can hold on.
And while you're finding that, let me just say that obviously the Paracas, yes, there are cradle headboarded skulls from the general population that we're trying to emulate these hybrids that had the natural elongated skulls with, what do they have on average? 30% more cranial mass than a normal skull?
Well, we figure there's about 20 to 25% larger. Yes, absolutely.
And then larger eye sockets, bigger jaws, missing sagittal sutures, and then, like you said, the foramen magnum hole. That's the game changer. And then there's been all these infant and newborn skulls discovered, full-on mummies with massive elongated skulls.
Yeah, no, I completely concur. And you know, we're not saying that cranial deformation didn't happen, cradle headboarding. We know it happened. I mean, absolutely, that's what they did. But why are they doing this? And you know, I spent here's the Chongo skulls right there.
That's got to have, what would you say, 40% at least more cranial mass?
No, I'm gonna here's other shots of it. I'm still gonna go with 25. I'm gonna be conservative. I'm gonna go with 25 to 30%. And we're the only team. See, everybody always looks at the elongation. No one ever turned it upside down. We have this on film. It's in our, this is why you guys need to do your homework. You can watch that film. Here he goes again, trying to sell those films. But you need to.
And what film was that called again?
It's On the Trail of a Nephilim. There's 8 films in the series. It's number 6, DNA. And we're in the museum, and there's no one in the museum. All the lights are off. We walk into the room. There's the display case with that Chongo skull, which I just showed you. It's in the display case. They push the display case out. They open up the doors. The woman goes in, takes the skull. It's all on film. And we say, roll it over. We want to see where the foramen magnum is. We roll it over. The foramen magnum's all the way to the posterior, all the way to the occipital plate. If it's any further back, it's outside the skull. It can't work. And we photographed that. We filmed it. We were the first people. First
So
people.
let me ask you this because I know we're getting close to out of time. So what was it like? Again, we're talking about evidence, right? And you even put out a recent video on your YouTube about evidence, and you're talking about these skulls. So again, you believe that these crazy Paracas skulls, these are descended from the Nephilim. Like we've got their
Correct.
skulls that we can literally hold. So personally, what was it like for you back in 2013 or whenever that was to literally hold what was, from the seed of what you would call the serpent? What was going through your mind?
I was completely blown away, which is why we had a team of people the first time we went down there. We were with Joe Taylor. Judd Burton was our archaeologist at that time. Myself, Richard Shaw, of course, our Richard and I were making films about all this. That became number 6, The Secret Cosmic War in the Watcher series. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just like there's so much information. It was a mind blower. And I got to tell you, I was under such demonic oppression after that first trip for a number of years. Because when you handle stuff like that, they don't like that. And there were attachments. And I didn't know then what I know now. And it's not for the faint of heart, and you just don't go trotting down. It's like, I tell people it's like Elmer Fudd going into Satan's dark closet or Hell's Kitchen
Hmm.
and picking up artifacts, which I won't do that anymore. There were
Let me
attachments to these things,
let
absolutely.
me let me ask you this. I know you've been to Peru obviously many times. I've been there many times now. Every time I go, I learn more and more about the ancient oral traditions of even the Inca. We've got guides that are descendants of the Inca, and so they know the real history, right? And they talk all about giants and hybrids. And one thing that's just fascinated me the last couple of trips is learning about, because you go out in the Cusco highlands and you see these huacas everywhere, the precision cut altar like looking, which were probably made way earlier by an ancient culture or civilization, but then the Inca used it as this
Yeah,
place of worship.
yes.
So according to our tour guides, um, they talk about how the crazy thing is that some of these Paracas were even living, into the time of the Inca, and were like the priests. They were the elite knowledge keepers, and how the most prized possession of the Inca were these mummies with the elongated skulls, like the Waikiki one you see in the Andajaleas Museum, and how during the solstice they would bring the mummies into these huacas, and when the sun would hit at the right time, some of these would become animated and would even begin speaking to the people and telling them stuff. I think maybe even demanding sacrifice. Have you heard some of that?
Yeah, and what people need to understand is this is occult underpinnings big time. This is the fingerprints. This is the handiwork of the dragon. This is why I will no longer hold any of these artifacts. I mean, I just won't do it because I believe that there's attachments, just like you said. The during the solstices and the mummies become animated. I mean, this stuff is like really creepy stuff. And when you go to Cusco and you see the megalithic wall that's there, I believe it's pre-flood. I believe that wall was built before the flood of Noah. There's no other stonework like it. We see it in Egypt. We see it in Peru. And you remember when Moses and Aaron come into Pharaoh in Egypt, there's a full blown occult paradigm in operation at that time, full blown. This is why when Moses throws his staff down, the Egyptians throws their staffs down. They become snakes. No one's running out of the building going, "Oh my gosh, dude, look what happened." No one's doing that. And it's not taught in the churches. They don't get that. And then the other side of the aisle will go, "Well, the Anunnaki were precedes the Bible by maybe 1,000 years." Blah blah blah. Well, that's a straw man argument. The Anunnaki are nothing more than the fallen angels doing the same stuff they've always done, mixing the seed, dispensing knowledge, doing all this stuff. It's the same old. It's the same old. Corrupting the image. Doug Hamp's book, great book by the way. But
You're saying Anunnakis is the same, it's a different word for the same thing.
I believe it's fallen angels. If people want to do a deep dive, go to Mike Heiser's website, Sitchin is Wrong, Zechariah Sitchin, sitchiniswrong.com, and you can see for yourself the mistranslation of the Anunnaki. And this is what the other side of the aisle run with this constantly. Heiser could read the ancient manuscripts, which is why he was, his research, even though he passed away last year, which was unfortunate. He did great research, and that's why I tip my hat towards him and direct people to sitchiniswrong.com and see for yourself. You can go to the archives and read the clay tablets yourself and the translation. You can do it yourself and see that no, there's nothing to do with what we're being told. That these are our friendly space brothers from Epsilon Eridani or some far off constellation.
So these Paracas skulls, yeah, you and Brian Forster were like the groundbreakers in bringing these to real prominence. It seems like in the modern age, talking about their DNA. And if memory serves me right, didn't you trace their DNA to the Black Sea and all that stuff?
Well, we did. I mean, Brian also did his own DNA study. Yes, it's Middle Eastern, Black Sea. It's Nephilim Central. I mean, Eastern European. I mean, the one of the elongated skulls we did testing on early on came back U2E1. I mean, which is the baby, and another one showed a Druze connection. I mean, we're not making this stuff up. T2B. It's right in the heart of Nephilim Central. All that area is what I refer to as Nephilim Central. Now, Brian and I have a different opinion as to what these entities are. I don't think Brian, I can't speak for him because he's not here. I don't think he believes the Genesis 3:15 or the Genesis 6 narrative. I'm not sure what Brian believes. I haven't spoken to him in a couple of years. But, hats off to Brian. Hats off to Senior Juan Navarro, who was the one as a child was out running around in Chongos, picking up the skulls and creating this museum later on in his life, the Paracas History Museum. And then Brian got there and saw what this was. And Brian was the one that started the YouTube videos, which I contacted Brian. That's why we flew down there. And Brian served as our guide and, took us up to Cusco and all these other places. But Brian didn't discover them. I mean, everything was already in place. Senior Juan had that museum. Brian took it and put it on the map via his YouTube channel, Bully for Brian. He did a great job. But then we took it and we ran it from a Christian perspective, a biblical perspective. And I think we've shown without a shadow of a doubt, especially in all of our films, that this is Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology.
Fascinating. Well, we're out of time. This has been insightful, LA. Thank you so much for your time. Tell everybody how they can follow you, again, how they can get your books, films, and what you're working on next.
Yeah, we've spent an hour. There's 30 films, there's 14 books. Hopefully I've whetted your appetite, but people need to do their homework. And a lot of it problematic, especially in this younger generation under 30, they don't like doing their homework. They want everything in a 1 minute short, and somehow they think they're going to understand what's going on. Well, it doesn't work that way. I've spent decades researching, not only in the archives, but boots on the ground, talking to people, seeing things myself. That's why we created 30 films. The Roswell one for the evidence exoneration in the debris field here. I mean, we went to the debris field. We found 2 pieces of metal. 9 and 10, the last 2 films in our 10-part UFO series. You can download all these things in our streaming site for $4.99. You can download one film for the price of a cup of coffee. Streaming.lamarzulli.net. Streaming.lamarzulli.net. You want the DVDs or you want the books, go to lamarzulli.com, lamarzulli.com. And Derek, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Number 14, The Rungs of a Ladder of Disclosure, will come out in October. The first 500 people will get an autographed copy of that book once we get them in our hands. But thanks for having me on. God bless you, sir. Really appreciate it.
LA, thanks again, and best of luck. And man, keep pumping out the material. Thanks so much.